Why does someone suddenly start chasing you the moment you stop pursuing them? This is a question you've probably asked yourself more than once in your life. There are times when we feel ignored, rejected, or simply unappreciated by the very people we give the most attention to. And yet, something strange happens when we decide to step back. Almost magically, the person who once dismissed or overlooked us begins to seek us out, show interest, and even act as if they've always cared. But why does this happen? Is it just coincidence? Or is there something much deeper going on beneath the surface? Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in modern psychology, offers us a powerful explanation that goes far beyond superficial emotional games. According to his studies of the unconscious mind, human attraction, and interpersonal relationships, this phenomenon is anything but accidental. It's not a game. It's the direct result of psychological forces that are always at work, within us and within others, even if we are unaware of them. To begin understanding this, you have to grasp a fundamental principle. Human desire is rooted in perceived value and psychological attention. When you chase someone, when you're constantly available, when you make it clear, either through words or actions, that you are willing to give everything without requiring anything in return, what you are really communicating is that your presence doesn't have to be earned, that it's freely available. And unfortunately, the human mind rarely values what it believes is always there, always accessible. Jung believed that life operates through a balance of opposing energies. In the realm of relationships, this dynamic often appears as a tension between closeness and distance, between desire and availability. When someone senses that you are too available, their unconscious mind begins to categorize you as something guaranteed. And the moment something becomes guaranteed, it tends to lose its perceived value. It's not that people consciously think this way. It's that the unconscious responds to availability by dialing down desire. But the moment you remove yourself from the equation, when you stop chasing, stop texting, stop waiting around, the energy shifts. The other person experiences an unconscious fear, the fear of loss. And fear of loss is one of the most powerful motivators of human behavior. We often don't realize how much we want something until it's no longer easily available. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding the hidden architecture of the human mind. Jung spoke extensively about projection, how we project our inner wounds, insecurities, and desires onto others. When you chase someone, they may begin to project the idea that your worth is somehow tied to their attention, that you need them to feel whole. But when you step back, when you stop placing them at the center of your emotional world, the projection transforms. Suddenly, you're not the needy one. You're not the person waiting to be chosen. You become someone with options, someone with emotional independence, someone who doesn't require anyone's approval to feel complete. That shift is magnetic. Desire, in its rawest form, is not fueled by constant presence. It is sparked by strategic absence. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about genuinely embodying a state where you no longer need to be gotten. You shift from being someone who seeks validation to someone who generates it from within. And that change does not go unnoticed. Jung also taught that the human psyche is always seeking to become whole, to integrate all aspects of itself. When someone feels that they have complete control over another person, that mystery, that edge of curiosity, fades. But when they sense that you're slipping out of reach, when they feel they can no longer predict or influence your actions, They wake up. Their interest is reignited. That curiosity is the psyche's way of trying to reclaim what it feels it might lose. And in that process, the person is driven to reconnect. This is deeply tied to one of Jung's most central ideas, individuation. Individuation is the lifelong journey of becoming whole, of no longer seeking external sources to validate your existence, but instead integrating your inner world. When you chase someone, it often reveals that you haven't yet completed that inner journey. You are, whether consciously or not, placing your self-worth in someone else's hands. You are silently saying, I need you to feel complete. But when you take your energy back, when you stop trying to extract wholeness from others and instead find it within yourself, something extraordinary happens. You shift from being the one who chases to the one who is pursued. You're no longer emotionally dependent. You're no longer projecting lack. You begin to project completeness, confidence, and peace. And people are irresistibly drawn to that. And this doesn't apply only to romantic relationships. Think of any time in your life when you gave too much, cared too deeply, or pursued someone, be it a friend, a family member, or even a professional contact, only to feel invisible. What happened when you finally walked away? When you stopped sending messages, stopped initiating contact, stopped bending over backwards? Chances are they started to notice. Maybe they called. Maybe they asked about you. Maybe they came back, even if just for a moment. That wasn't magic. That was psychology. That was the unconscious reacting to a change in value perception. But here's the most important part. This is not about pretending to detach just to get someone to come back. It's not about stopping the chase so you can secretly hope they'll return. It's about truly transforming yourself into someone who doesn't need to chase, someone who is emotionally self-sufficient. Because when you truly reach that place, when you no longer need external approval to feel worthy, you naturally start attracting the right people into your life. More importantly, you free yourself. You free yourself from the anxiety, the obsession, the constant need for reassurance. You begin to move through life as someone who knows their own worth, someone who is no longer controlled by fear of loss, someone who creates from abundance instead of lack. Jung once said that what we fear the most is usually what we most need to confront. If you fear losing someone, if you feel the urge to chase and cling, that fear is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's a signal pointing to the places within you that need healing. It's an invitation to ask yourself the harder questions. Why do I feel like my value depends on someone else's attention? What void am I trying to fill? What am I running from within myself? Because here's the truth. The moment you begin to value yourself, truly, deeply, and unapologetically, everything changes. You stop acting out of neediness and start acting out of confidence. You stop trying to be enough for others and start recognizing that you've always been enough for yourself. People sense it. They see it in the way you move, in the way you speak, in the way you carry yourself. You become someone with purpose, with direction, someone whose life no longer revolves around being chosen by others. And that's exactly the kind of person who effortlessly draws others in. Not because you're playing a mind game, but because you've learned how to be whole, all on your own. Carl Jung taught us that true freedom does not lie in the ability to control others, but in liberating ourselves from the very desire to do so. Think about that for a moment. The next time you feel the urge to chase after someone, to pursue them endlessly in an attempt to be seen, valued, or loved, pause. stop yourself and ask, what am I truly seeking here? Am I moving from a place of trust, or am I acting out of fear? When you begin to truly trust in your own worth, when you understand at a deep level that you don't need to chase anyone, you uncover a powerful secret. You are already enough. You don't need to run after anyone to prove your value. That realization alone is transformative. It's the moment when the chase ends and true connection begins, not with others, but with yourself. People often believe that walking away or stopping the pursuit is a strategy, a game to play. But this isn't about games or manipulation. When people start seeking you out after you've stopped pursuing them, it's not because of psychological tricks. It's because you've begun to radiate something far more powerful than charm or strategy: authenticity, confidence, and self-love. These qualities have a magnetism of their own. They draw people in, not because you're trying to pull them, but because you've become deeply aligned with your own essence. When you stop chasing, it doesn't just change how others see you. It transforms how you see yourself. Jung often emphasized that the human psyche is in a continuous quest for balance. One of the deepest imbalances we carry is the fear of abandonment. And when you're pursuing someone, really chasing them, you're often reacting to that very fear. You believe, often unconsciously, that unless you stay present, show interest, or constantly remind someone of your value, they'll vanish from your life. But that's an illusion, a trick of the unconscious mind. It's a trap that feeds emotional dependency rather than strengthening your sense of identity. When you act from fear, you become predictable. And predictability, by its very nature, dulls desire. The human mind loses interest in what it can always count on to be there, no matter what. That doesn't mean you need to play hard to get or become cold and distant. It means you need to find balance, a place where your essence no longer depends on external validation. Jung illustrated this through his concept of the shadow, that hidden part of ourselves we often reject or deny, yet which continues to shape our behaviors. If your shadow holds a deep hunger for approval or an intense fear of rejection, that energy will leak into your actions and shape the way others see you. The answer to ending the cycle of pursuit is not simply to pull back, it's to do the inner work. Ask yourself, why do I feel the need to chase? Why is it so hard to let things flow naturally? Often, this compulsion comes from an old wound, one we may not even be aware of. A wound born in childhood or forged in past relationships, where we learned that love had to be earned, that affection had to be fought for, that our worth was tied to someone else's attention. But that's not truth. That's a distortion, a belief shaped by pain, not reality. Once you begin to heal those wounds, you start to see more clearly. Real connection does not arise from effortful pursuit, but from unfiltered authenticity. When you stop trying to force a bond, when you redirect that energy toward your own growth and well-being, that's when you begin to attract what truly resonates with your soul. And here's the fascinating part. Those who once overlooked you, who once took you for granted, begin to notice something different. Suddenly, you're not the person scrambling for a reply, not the one chasing affection. You've become someone who respects themselves too much to beg for attention. And the human mind reacts to this in a very particular way. Jung spoke of the principle of compensation. When something becomes scarce or unavailable, the psyche attempts to restore balance by increasing desire. This is why, when someone senses they're losing you, their mind may generate a stronger attraction in response. But this only happens when the change is real, when it stems from a genuine shift in your self-perception. If you're merely stepping back in the hope that the other person will chase you, but deep down you're still clinging to need and lack, that energy is still present, and people feel it. Even when you don't speak it aloud, it radiates. That's why the most powerful move isn't to walk away as a tactic, but to walk away because you've come to know that your wholeness isn't dependent on anyone. When you reach this level of inner clarity, the urge to chase fades naturally. You stop strategizing. You no longer try to engineer reactions or manipulate circumstances. You begin to live from a space of such profound peace that your presence itself becomes captivating, without even trying. Jung once said that what we repress ends up controlling us. If you constantly strive to be accepted, if you feel the need to prove your worth to others, chances are you carry a deep wound around self-image. But here is the liberating truth. You don't need to prove anything. Your value doesn't come from how many people want you, how many relationships you maintain, or how much attention you receive. Your value is inherent. It's built into your very being. And the moment you truly believe that, the world starts to reflect it back to you. When you internalize this truth, your energy shifts in ways that words can't explain. You no longer feel the need to always be present, to send that message, to find a reason to stay in someone's mind. And paradoxically, that's when people begin to think of you more, because your absence creates space. And in that space, the mind starts to fill the void with memories, with curiosity, with wonder. This is why letting go makes you more attractive. Not because you've withdrawn your energy as a tactic, but because you've stopped pouring yourself into people who don't reciprocate. Now, you are someone with purpose, with direction, with a sense of identity that doesn't rely on being validated by others. And that is incredibly powerful. Jung referred to individuation as the process of becoming your most authentic self. It's the path to true personal fulfillment. And part of that path is learning not to need approval to feel whole. We often cling to those who don't value us, thinking that if we lose them, we lose a part of ourselves. But the truth is, you never lose what is truly yours. If someone is meant to be in your life, they'll stay, without you having to chase. And if they leave the moment you stop trying, it means their presence was never based on true connection. It was held together by your effort alone. So ask yourself, how free am I really? Does my happiness depend on others' attention? Do I need external validation to feel complete? Because until you can answer these questions with radical honesty, you'll keep repeating the same patterns, chasing people who were never meant to stay. The day you finally let go, the day you truly understand that you don't need to chase anyone, that's the day your real life begins. That's the day you awaken to your inner power. That energy you used to invest in seeking validation, you can now channel it into building a life that fulfills you. And when that happens, when your transformation comes from within, you no longer need to ask for love. It comes to you naturally. That's when people start to seek you out. Not because of what you say or do, but because of what you radiate. Confidence, serenity, authenticity. But the most important part of this journey is not that others begin to look for you. It's that you no longer need them to. Because now, you understand something profound. Everything you were searching for outside was always within you. And when you finally see that the urge to chase was never about genuine love, but about a deep fear of emptiness, everything changes. You begin to see relationships more clearly. They become mirrors in which you once projected your insecurities. But now, you see yourself for who you truly are: whole, worthy, enough. Carl Jung once said that what disturbs us most in others is often a reflection of something unresolved within ourselves. When you feel ignored, unappreciated, or undervalued by someone else, it's an invitation to turn inward and ask, in what ways am I ignoring myself? What parts of my life am I settling in? Where am I accepting less than I truly deserve? The truth is, no one can make you feel insignificant without your internal permission. Every time you chase after someone, whether it's for their attention, their love, or their validation, you are, perhaps unknowingly, surrendering your power. You're handing over the control of your self-worth, allowing someone else to decide when you matter and when you don't. And in doing so, you become reactive. You start living in a state of constant anticipation, always waiting for a reply, a sign, a gesture that confirms your presence is being noticed. But here's the paradox. The more desperate you are to be seen, the more invisible you become. The more you seek to be validated, the less attractive you appear. Jung emphasized the importance of integrating the shadow, the hidden, often uncomfortable parts of our psyche that we try to deny. In this context, the shadow might be your fear of abandonment, your terror of being irrelevant in someone else's life. Yet we often fail to recognize that this hunger for validation doesn't stem from the present moment. It's a wound from the past. Maybe at some point in your life, you learned that love was conditional, that you had to earn affection, that unless you were always proving your worth, you'd be forgotten. These beliefs become patterns, and patterns become prisons. But the good news is, you are not bound to that prison. You can break free the moment you decide that your value is not dependent on the presence or absence of anyone else. Healing begins when you stop acting from a place of lack and begin living from a sense of inner wholeness. And once you make that shift, something fascinating happens. People are no longer drawn to you because you disappeared. They're drawn to you because your energy has transformed. You've become someone with purpose, someone whose life no longer revolves around being noticed by others. That shift is magnetic. People are instinctively attracted to those who do not beg for attention, to those who are at peace with themselves, whose presence radiates authenticity and self-assurance. And this is where most people misunderstand the process. They think that to stop chasing means to ignore someone, to go silent, to wait for the other person to realize what they're missing. But if deep down, you're still anxious about being noticed, if you're still secretly hoping they'll come back, then nothing has really changed. You're still in the same cycle. Only now, you're waiting passively instead of actively chasing. Real transformation doesn't happen when someone misses you. It happens when you realize that you don't need them to. Think about it. When someone truly values you, when someone genuinely wants to be part of your life, you don't need to keep reminding them. You don't have to prove your worth over and over. You don't have to stress over whether they texted you back, or how fast they replied, or whether they're showing enough interest. Authentic connections flow effortlessly, and when you fully understand that, your entire approach to relationships changes. You stop accepting breadcrumbs of attention. You stop scanning for signs that someone cares. You no longer settle for half-hearted connections, because now you know your worth. And when you know your worth, others can't help but see it too. Jung believed that the unconscious mind is always seeking balance. If someone feels like they have unrestricted access to your time, your energy, and your presence without ever having to earn it, their unconscious mind will start to devalue it. Not because they're bad people, but because that's how the human psyche works. Desire is born in uncertainty, in the sense that something must be earned or discovered, not handed over freely at all times. This doesn't mean you have to become cold or distant. It means you must learn to respect your own energy, your own time, and your own presence enough to not give them away without discernment. When you stop chasing, when you no longer try to convince someone of your value, you begin to attract people who already see it, who never needed convincing to begin with. And this change doesn't come from playing psychological games. It comes from within. It comes from a fundamental shift in your energy. You are no longer the one waiting to be chosen. You are now the one who chooses. You are no longer the one who settles. You are the one who sets boundaries. That's the difference between someone who lives in scarcity and someone who lives in abundance. The biggest mistake many people make is believing that if they stop showing interest, they'll lose the person forever. But here's the real question. Do you truly want someone who only values you when they feel they're losing you? Do you really want to be with someone whose attention is conditional upon your unavailability? Because if the answer is yes, then what you're looking for isn't love, it's validation. And validation is a trap. It's a black hole. No matter how much you receive, it will never feel like enough. You will constantly seek new signs, fresh proof that you matter. You will be stuck in an endless loop of anxiety and insecurity, always afraid of being overlooked. But when your sense of worth comes from within, when your confidence is no longer dependent on how others respond to you, the need to chase anyone simply dissolves. Jung said that the greatest act of self-love is to stop searching outside for what can only be found within. If you feel like someone is ignoring you, if you feel like you're not being given the place you deserve, it is not a signal to try harder. It's a signal to pause and ask yourself, why am I allowing this? What part of me believes I have to accept less than I truly deserve? Because when you answer these questions honestly, you'll realize that it was never really about the other person. It has always been about you, how you see yourself, how you value yourself, how much you believe you are worthy of. And when you stop chasing someone, the most important change doesn't happen in them. It happens in you. You stop being someone who waits, who aches, who clings, and you become someone who chooses, who flows, who trusts. That's the real transformation. That's when everything changes. And once you reach that point, once you truly understand that you don't need to run after anyone to be appreciated, something extraordinary happens. You begin to attract exactly what you always wanted. But this time, it comes from a place of self-love, not neediness. That is the most powerful thing you can ever do. When you finally understand that your worth doesn't require pursuit, that it doesn't depend on someone else's recognition, something shifts inside of you forever. You no longer feel anxious about silence. You no longer care about external approval. You no longer waste your energy trying to prove your value. Because now you understand a fundamental truth. Relationships built from scarcity will always drain you. But relationships rooted in abundance will nourish you. And abundance always begins within you. Carl Jung believed the unconscious mirrors our internal state. If you're filled with despair, you'll draw in relationships that reinforce that despair. If you're haunted by a fear of loss, you'll find yourself in situations that make that fear come true. But if what lives inside you is peace, confidence, and a strong sense of self, the outer world will respond to that energy. The right people will show up. Genuine connections will deepen. And most importantly, you'll stop settling for less than you truly deserve. When you stop chasing, when you realize your worth isn't up for negotiation, others begin to see you differently, not because you've manipulated the situation, but because your energy has shifted. You're no longer begging for attention. You're not trying to prove your value. You're no longer pleading for love. You simply are. And in that state of pure authenticity, you become a kind of magician. But here's the key. You don't do it to get someone back. You do it because you finally understand that the only person you ever truly needed to reclaim is yourself. This isn't about playing games with someone else's mind. It's about transforming your own. Because once you stop searching outside for what already exists within you, everything else starts to flow naturally. At this moment, I want you to ask yourself one final question. What would shift in your life if you genuinely trusted your own worth? How would your relationships change if you no longer felt the need to chase anyone? How would your perspective on the world evolve if instead of waiting for validation, you began living from your true self? The answers to those questions can transform your entire life. They could be the turning point between remaining stuck in a cycle of neediness or starting to build relationships rooted in security and trust. And that transformation begins now with a choice. The choice to let go, the choice to trust, the choice to choose yourself. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave your comment below and tell me which part made you reflect the most. Because every time you engage, every time you share, you're helping more people find this message. Together, we can bring this content to those who still feel trapped in emotional dependency, to those who need to be reminded that their worth is not defined by anyone else. So, become part of this community. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. Because here, we don't just talk about relationships, we dive into personal growth, into how to transform your life from within. And if you're ready to keep learning, explore more content on this channel. Every video is crafted to help you awaken, to help you uncover your true power, and to guide you toward a life lived with intention. Remember, now is the time to change. Choose your worth, choose your peace, and above all, choose to live from your most authentic self. I'll see you in the next video.